Boswell says after she smelled the smoke, she walked to the back portion of this mobile home and saw flames and smoke billowing from this doorway. Knowing that the family was inside, she immediately ran to the front portion of the home and kicked in the front door in order to get the family to safety. Several firemen told me they did not want the flames to jump this road, but as you can see, the flames did manage to scorch some of the land on this side. But their biggest concern was if the flames moved even further than this, it would have threatened even more property. Laughlin said he's tried everything to deter thieves. Even though he's placed high illumination lights in the area and gates around the unit, they still came. He says once a thief even rammed his car into one of the units to bust through the gate. So he decided to up the ante and enclose the units in this high-grade steel that's almost impossible to cut. Games are put together now, but Saturday night this area was a complete mess. Sims says fortunately the thieves only busted the wooden portion of the gaming console, and you can still see right here where the wood has been battered. He says if the thieves had messed up the electronic portion of the games, it would have cost him $2,500 each to replace. Harley says his barn is a complete loss. As you can see, part of the roof has been completely ripped off, the framing is cracked, and one side of the barn has been separated from the building. He says it's going to cost about $20,000 to fix, but despite the damage, there is a silver lining.
Reporter Nicole Osei was in the courtroom today and got some insight into this dramatic case. Nicole, what was it like in that courtroom?
Both Kemp's family and the victim Robert Miller's family were in the courtroom, and the mood was extremely tense. In fact, after Kemp's brief arraignment, the families exchanged some heated glances and words. They had to be led off the courtroom floor in different directions. But I wanted to talk to the legal minds who were there from the beginning to find out what we may see if Kemp goes to trial.
And that is tonight's big story. 7 News reporter Nicole Osei was at today's march, and she joins us live tonight at Sanders Heights Apartments, where it ended. Nicole, what was the mood of the crowd today?
It was one of hope, solidarity, and sorrow. I was able to walk these streets with the tearful family of D'Angelo Hurd, who was murdered back in August in the View. I spoke with the mother and sister of Kenneth Young, who was murdered outside the Dewdrop Inn back in September. These families say they joined the march to put a face on the senseless violence and be part of the call from local pastors to end it.
We take authority over fear right now in Jesus' name.
As the crowd formed a human chain around a Sanders Heights apartment building,
we speak to the north, the south, the east, and the west.
Pastors asked for spiritual guidance in this war on crime that's claimed the life of too many. Benicia Porter, whose cousin D'Angelo Hurd was murdered back in August, says she was overcome with emotion.
That meant a lot to my family, you know, because you don't have a lot of people that come out in the community and get involved in things like this because they're afraid, you know, but as long as you got God on your side, that's enough, because God is going to always have your back regardless.
Porter says it's a loss she hopes most people will never feel, but Shakita Young has felt that pain. Her brother Kenneth was murdered back in September. She says she thinks today's prayer walk will make an impact on the neighborhood.
I told my sister-in-law that this might stop a little bit of stuff that's going on, to see that a lot of people did come out here not scared to come to actually to Sanders Heights.
137, 138, 139.
Pastor Sam Moyd says today's turnout created a crack in the wall of fear that has gripped this community for too long.
This showed us that if the community come together with the pastors and the police, a 3-4 cord is not easily broken. And we're going to be well on our way to helping solve some of this crime in the community.
If you feel like you're scared to come out here and you can't represent whoever passed away or even represent your city to stop the violence, your child is outside, it can happen to your child. Everyone should come out and be around with all this stuff.
Pastor Moy said he wants to thank the community and Lawton Police for marching today. In fact, it's the first of 3 more marches pastors have planned for areas in Lawton devastated by violence. Reporting live in South Lawton, I'm Nicole Osei.
7 News reporter Nicole Osei met with the victim and the Sheriff's Department today to find out more about Ruddock's scam. Nicole.
Dave, for obvious reasons, the victim did not want to show his face on camera, but he did tell me his story and showed me text messages exchanged between he and Ruddock. He says not only is he out over $7,000, his animals still don't have enough to eat. I called Ruddock to get his side of the story. He says he had to call his attorney first, but I never heard back. That is something our alleged victim, who we will call John, says isn't a surprise.
I didn't hear from him for a few days when the hay was supposed to be delivered. And then on the internet, I typed in his name and a whole bunch of warnings came up.
That's when John says he began to worry, so he called Ruddock.
Contacted him several times, and it was always day after tomorrow, after my daughter's birthday, nothing but stories, real smooth talker.
John showed me the numerous text message exchanges between he and Ruddock, proof he says of a 6-week ordeal of getting nowhere with Ruddock. He says he even tried to get his money back from Ruddock's bank.
I called his bank, talked to a manager there, and the bank even said they know him and this must not be a new problem because they said, oh, he's not going to authorize the reverse of this wire.
Our victim waited 45 days before pressing charges with the Comanche County Sheriff's Department. He would later find out he wasn't Ruddock's only victim.
We did checking into it and investigating it. We found out that his name was in several counties of not producing the hay. Tells everybody he has hay, but not producing, delivering it.
Comanche County Sheriff Kenny Stradley says he wants to warn people about Ruddock and other scam artists like him.
Please, you've worked too hard for your money. Do not get caught up in a scam like that where you don't get your hay and you lose your money.
John says he had to find out the hard way. He says it's made him cynical of doing business through Craigslist.
You go out on Craigslist and looking, there's a lot of people out there trying to scam people, and now I'm spamming, or not spamming, but quarantining their ads. You know, I'm looking for the people that are out there scamming.
Ruddock faces similar charges in 4 other counties. One of those is Mays County, which is east of Tulsa. Their sheriff's department told me today he was arrested there just last month on similar charges.
7 News reporter Nicole Osei is live at the unit block of Northwest 36th Street where one of those raids took place. So, Nicole, how did this investigation start?
Well, Lawton police say it started with a simple traffic stop by the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. During that stop, they found drugs and made an arrest. The OHP turned that information over to the Drug Enforcement Agency, and that started the 10-month-long domino effect that led to today's bust. I spoke with one man who saw it all unfold from his front door. Shards of glass are unsettling remnants from this morning's drug bust. Leroy Brooks lives right across the street. He awoke to the sound of gunfire.
Being an ex-cop, I recognized gunfire. Then my wife, who was already up, she came in and, it kind of scared her. She came in, wanted to know what was going on.
Brooks says when he walked outside, he saw about 50 law enforcement officers up and down this street, and they had this house surrounded. Authorities say it's one of several locations in Lawton involved in the drug sweep. Interim Police Chief James Apple says for the past 10 months, the 7 who were arrested were placed under surveillance and were caught selling drugs.
It was determined definitely that these were key players, that their drug activity was major, and also without a doubt that weapons and things of that nature were present.
Chief Apple says once they were arrested and taken to the Oklahoma Highway Patrol Department in Lawton, they realized how much trouble they were in.
When they were brought into that central location and they saw the other key people that had been arrested, and they knew that we, law enforcement, knew the connection and knew what was going on, and then they could definitely, you could tell it, you could see it in their faces that they felt that they had been taken.
Apple says the suspects, who are all facing federal charges, are being held in a Grady County facility. He says the evidence, which includes 4 cars that were impounded, has been taken to Oklahoma City. Reporting live from Southwest Lawton, I'm Nicole Osei.
7 News reporter Nicole Osei found out more about the accident from Keaton's cousin, who was with him when it happened. So, Nicole, how badly was he hurt?
His cousin says Keaton suffered a fractured skull, but fortunately, he has no internal injuries. He says the doctors are monitoring his condition. Now, Duncan police say there were 2 factors that probably saved Keaton's life, and those are his unusually small size, because he's smaller than your average 4-year-old, and the large size of the pickup truck that hit him. Javier Gonzalez says he will always remember that fateful trip to get an ice cream with his little cousin. Gonzalez said he did not know that Keaton had left his side until he heard a loud boom.
He did a flip when she hit him, and he didn't hit the ground yet. He did another flip and went under the truck and started rolling. And we told her, was like, hey, stop. And she stopped.
Gonzalez says the woman in the pickup was driving north along this road when she hit Keaton at the speed limit sign behind me. He says Keaton's shirt got stuck underneath the front end of the pickup, and he was dragged a few feet before stopping right here at this orange mark.
Had to get down there and pull his shirt off, pull the shirt off the bolt. Because his body was like in the shape of he was like curled up. And he wasn't crying or nothing until his mom came out there and he seen that his mom was crying and stuff, so it just made him start crying.
They're like a magnet for kids, and and I'm going to the ice cream. I'm not going to look for somebody driving down the road.
Duncan Police Chief Daniel Fort says Keaton's small stature may have saved his life.
Well, simply because he ended up under the car, so smaller person fits a little better under there with less injury, possibility of injury in that.
He says yesterday's accident is a grim reminder of why we should always watch children closely, especially near busy streets.
You would hope that they could go out and cross the street and get an ice cream without trouble, but again, they're just not mature enough to be aware of how much damage a vehicle can do and the danger that's there.
Asked Chief Ford if the driver is facing any charges. He says right now the accident is under investigation and the driver is fully cooperating with detectives. He says once all the evidence is gathered, they will present what they have to the district attorney's office.
7 News Nightside reporter Nicole Osei learned more details about the fire and the disturbing history of the house from neighbors. Nicole?
The fire is being investigated as a possible arson, but nothing is being ruled out. Investigators know the fire started in a storage area in the rear of the home that opens into the backyard and not the living area. Because of that, they do not believe that squatters caused the fire. Neighbors I spoke with say last night's fire is only one of a string of problems spilling over from the abandoned house.
The commotion around this vacant house has now died down. The scorching flames left a pile of rubble and very little clues. But Angela Tatum, who lives next door, says the fire comes as no surprise.
It's scary, but I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, this isn't the best neighborhood in the world, but, you know, it's crazy. It's just absolutely nuts.
This keep outside was here before last night's fire, but apparently it didn't work. Fire investigators say they found evidence that squatters had been living inside, drug paraphernalia, and graffiti on the walls. Now, neighbors say they were shocked to learn about the squatters, but say they've seen kids vandalizing this property in recent months.
The back windows have been boarded up. We've seen kids trying, you know, chomping through the backyard. We've had to get our cats out there. People have broken the windows out.
I just figured, you know, something happened down there with kids or something playing around with fire or something. I didn't have any clue of what was happening.
Fire investigators say they're not sure how the fire got started, but say evidence shows there may have been, quote, human involvement, whether intentional or not. Residents say the idea that it could have been set intentionally is unnerving.
It could be anybody walking up and down the street, so I have no idea.
That's heartbreaking. You really don't want to do that to somebody. If you're playing pranks like that, don't do it to a house. I mean, that's still somebody's house. They used to live there.
According to the police report, a neighbor said she saw two white teenage males walking away from the house around the time of the fire. I asked investigators about this lead, but they could not comment on that at this time.
Which caused the initial spark. 7 News reporter Nicole Osei was at the scene of that fire today. So, Nicole, how bad was it?
This was not as large as some of the ones we've seen lately. It burned around 200 acres, so it's about half the size of the one between Elgin and Sterling a couple of days ago. Firefighters say their main concern today was for the homes and livestock that were threatened. Now, there were about 5 homes in the general area of the fire, but the flames did not get close enough, so none of them had to be evacuated.
You can still hear the crackling embers and see the thick smoke as it billows from this charred land. Tony High owns the land where most of the fire burned and says he felt helpless when he saw the flames.
Saw the smoke and it got big in a hurry. The winds were blowing about 20 miles an hour. The main thing you can do is just try to save people's houses and try to get the livestock out of the way because it's going to keep going. There's not much else you can do.
It took firefighters from 5 departments about an hour to get the flames under control, but then the flames rekindled.
Several firemen told me they did not want the flames to jump this road, but as you can see, the flames did manage to scorch some of the land on this side. But their biggest concern was if the flames moved even further than this, it would have threatened even more property and livestock.
Reuben Pulis, who works for the family who owns property near the fire, shared their concern. He says when he saw the flames, he immediately took care of the livestock.
So I came out and got them up in a corral down here so they'd be out of the path of the fire in case it jumped the road.
Both Pulis and High say they are extremely fortunate that nothing was destroyed in the fire.
Extremely lucky. You know, without this half section of grass, well, we've got too many cattle for the grass that we have. So we'd probably have to do something with our cattle off this place. And that's not good.
I'm fortunate that this was all that was burned up. It was, like I say, these guys did a good job getting it shut down.
The Walters fire chief says that the fire is out, but they're still monitoring hotspots. He says, fortunately, there were no other structures destroyed and no one was injured.